Hello dear students, welcome. This is Joseline R. Today I'll continue lesson What is Moral Action, written by M.K.Gandhi. In part 1 and part 2 we discussed certain things. We discussed the things which are necessary to consider an action as moral or non-moral. You need to keep one thing in mind, that this lesson deals with moral and non-moral actions. See, most of the actions we perform, we do every day, are either moral or non-moral. They are not immoral actions. We consider almost all the actions we perform every day as moral, but they are not in fact moral. Most of the actions we do every day, are probably non-moral actions. So in the first part, in the first paragraph, in fact, Gandhiji tells us that customary actions can never be treated as moral actions. Customary means influenced because of the existing customs. Okay, practice. Such practiced actions cannot be called a moral action. In the second paragraph, Gandhiji very clearly describes that when an action is your own action means an intentional act. Intention means thinking and acting. When you think and act, only then your actions can be called moral. Otherwise, they just remain non-moral, mechanical actions. Mechanical means without any thought. When you act without thought, such actions remain non-moral. Not immoral, non-moral. Okay, but when you think, when the action springs from your will, such actions are called moral actions. When you listen to your conscience, when you have the belief, what belief? Gandhiji says, when you have the belief that, see, Gandhiji very clear, as long as we believe, okay, that the God within us, what is the God within us? Conscience. When you believe that conscience is the God of all gods, it witnesses each and every action. When you have this belief, only then your actions become moral. Got the point, dear students? Let us move on and see what Gandhiji tells us. Okay, fine. It is not enough that an act done by us is in itself good. It should have been done with the intention to do good. I've been telling from the first part that all good actions can never be treated as moral actions. Gandhiji says if an action is good, that is not enough to consider it as a moral action. It must have been done with good intention. Alright, see. That is to say, whether an act is moral or otherwise depends upon the intention of the doer. Intention of the doer is very important. Action being good is not important. The intention behind that action, good action, is very important. Remember, a good action becomes moral action only when the intention is good. Good action with good intention becomes a moral action. All good actions can never be treated as moral action, dear students. Good actions become moral actions only when it has good, the good actions have good intentions. Good actions, good intentions. Good action plus good intention is equal to moral action. That's it. See, two men. Gandhiji describes this concept with one more example. See, two men may have done exactly the same thing, but the act of one may be moral and that of the other the contrary. Contrary means opposite in nature. Two men have done the same action, good action. Gandhi says one person's action is moral whereas others is non-moral. They have done the same action. Two persons have done the same action, but one person's action is moral, the other person's is non-moral. Confused? Okay, let's move on. Take for instance, Gandhiji clears it. Take for example, a man who out of great pity feeds the poor, and another who does the same but with the motive of winning prestige or with some such selfish end. Motive, reason. See, two men have done the same thing. What same thing? They have fed the poor. First person fed the poor because he felt pity on them. On seeing poor, he felt pity, and the person fed the poor. Got it? One more person also fed the poor, but he did not feel pity on them with another motive, another reason. What another reason? See, of winning prestige or with some such selfish end. In order to win name and fame, prestige in the society, he fed poor people. You might have seen these days, when someone donates something, he informs it to everyone. Got it? He tells, whatever he gives, he just publishes it everywhere. He informs it to everyone through media, through other means. Got the point, dear students? So such actions which are done to win prestige, name and fame can never be called moral action. They are of course good actions. Feeding and helping others, definitely good action, but not moral. See, first person took pity on poor and he helped them, and he fed them, so definitely his action is moral. Whereas the second person also fed the poor, but his motive, intention, reason was different. He wanted to win name and fame, prestige in the society, so his action can never be considered as moral. It is just a non-moral action. His intention is good, his action is good, but intention is winning prestige. So second person's action cannot be called moral action. I think you got the point. Good action will become moral action only when it is accompanied with good intention. Good action, good intention. Only then we can call it good a moral action. So let's move on. Though the action is the same, both first person, second person, they have done the same action. What same action? They have fed the poor. Though the action is the same, the act of the one is moral and that of the other non-moral. I made it clear. The first person's action is moral, the second person's action is non-moral. The reader here ought to remember the difference between the two words non-moral and immoral. We are not talking about immoral actions here. Okay, from the first paragraph, Gandhiji is trying to make one thing clear, that this lesson discusses moral and non-moral actions. Most of the actions what a person does every day, he thinks that they are all moral actions, but no, most of the actions are non-moral, not immoral. Immoral is a different concept. Okay, you need to keep this point in mind. Okay, fine, let's move on. It may be that we do not always see good results flowing from a moral act. Many times it happens. Though our acts are moral, we may not get good benefit out of it. Okay, but when you do something thinking that you'll get benefit out of it, then definitely your action is not moral. That's what Gandhiji makes it clear. See, it may be that we do not always see good results flowing from a moral act. While thinking of morality, all that we need to see is that the act is good and is done with good intention. The result of an action is not within our control. God alone is the giver of fruit. How nice the concept is. Gandhiji says, you just focus on doing good things with good intention. Don't worry about the result. Who are we to decide the result? Okay, we can only expect. The giver of the fruit is God. Remember, God is omnipresent. He is present everywhere. He will be witnessing each and every action of us. Okay, definitely they will be paid. Got it? So don't worry about the fruits of your action, the benefit that comes out of your action. You just do an action with good intention. That is very important. Okay, that is our responsibility, Gandhiji says. Okay, don't worry about the benefit you get out of your good actions. Okay, do an action with good intention. The God will be watching and He will definitely give you the fruit. Fruit means not that fruit, the benefit after, in the second world, when we die, we reach the kingdom of God. There we will be treated in a proper way if you have really done good actions with good intentions. For the body, students, let's move on. Historians have called, Gandhiji gives one more example. Historians have called Emperor Alexander Great. Wherever he went, in the course of his conquests, he took the Greek language and Greek culture, arts and manners. And today, we enjoy the benefits of Greek civilization. Today, the whole world is enjoying the benefits of Greek language, literature and everything. Okay, most of the language and culture is benefited by Greek. The credit goes to Alexander, whom we call the Great. Alexander is called the Great. Okay, because he had become the emperor of almost 50% of the world, more than 50% of the world in his young age, and he wanted to become the emperor of the whole world, in fact. And wherever he went, he spread Greek language, literature, manners and arts. Got it? So today the whole world is enjoying the benefit of Greek literature, language, everything, architecture, art, I mean everything, totally the people are benefited. Okay, wherever, even our country, India, we are influenced by Greek literature a lot. Greek literature, Greek language, Greek, arts and all. The whole world is enjoying it. It is just because of a man called Alexander. Wherever he went during his conquest, he took Greek language, literature, arts and manners. So, the whole world is enjoying it. Okay, see what Gandhi says. But the intention of Alexander behind all this was only conquest and renown. Remember, Alexander the Great. Alexander's intention was not really, his intention was not to spread Greek language or literature to help the people. His intention was to show his supremacy. He wanted to prove that he is the superior. He is the most powerful person. In fact, he was the most powerful person in the world. His intention was not to spread Greek language or arts or manners or literature. His intention was to prove that he was the most powerful man. Got it? That's what Gandhi says. See, but the intention of Alexander behind all this, intention was not good. Of course, he took Greek language and literature during his conquest to other parts of the world. Good action. But intention was not good because his intention was to gain name and fame. So what Gandhi says is, who can therefore say that his actions were moral? How can you say that his actions were moral? Gandhi says, of course, he took Greek language, arts, manners everywhere. It's a good action. But the intention behind them was not at all good. His intention was to gain name and fame. So intention is not good. Of course, the action is good. Even today we're enjoying the benefit of Greek literature and language. But the intention of Alexander was not doing this. His intention was to gain prestige, popularity. So how can you call his actions moral is what Gandhiji is asking us. So let's move on. It was all right that he was termed great, but moral he cannot be called. Of course he was a great man, but his actions were not moral. I think you got the point. With the two examples, Gandhiji makes it very clear that every good action cannot be treated or considered as moral action. The intention behind that action is very important. Alexander is of course great, but his actions were not great because his intention was only to gain a name, popularity, not to spread Greek language or literature. So Gandhiji calls him great because of his conquest. Okay, but morally, his actions cannot be considered moral. So intention is very important, dear students. Only when the intention of an action is good, only then such actions can be treated as moral actions. Got it? In first paragraph, Gandhiji very clearly described in fact that customary actions can never be treated as moral action. Okay, in second paragraph, Gandhiji tells us that an action becomes moral when it springs from our will. Okay, when you act according to your conscience, when you give work to your power of thought, mind, only then such actions can be called moral. In the third paragraph, Gandhiji makes it very clear that an action to be called moral, a good action to be called moral should have been done with good intention. So good action with good intention can only be called a moral action. All good actions cannot be called moral action, dear students. I hope you got the point. Got it? So I'm going to end now. Stay tuned. In the next part, I'll continue. So lesson is quite interesting, dear students. Please note on all the important points. Try to implement them in your life. I am sure most of your actions will be good and moral as well. Take care, dear students. Stay home, stay safe.